Hey guys, welcome back to Trekyards. I'm Captain Foley.
And I am Commander Cockings. So should we all be ensigns?
Yeah, we're going to be undercover.
Because no one
That's
knows our
happening.
faces.
That's right. That's right. Today, it's spoilers, guys. We're going to be talking about the first episode of Lower Decks called Second Contact. And hopefully you guys have seen it. If not, you might want to check out our spoiler-free review. But this one, we're going to be kind of just talking about it, not too in-depth, just giving you our thoughts on it. And we'll be doing our live later tonight, where we break it down and have a full discussion. So,
And it's a very visual show, so there's going to be a lot of visual things in that. So Stuart, what did you think of episode 1?
I thought it was great. It was fun. It was kind of what I expected and yet kind of not. I kind of went in with little expectations because I hadn't watched a lot of Rick and Morty, but I kind of expected that kind of humor, and we did get that a little bit. It's very much a blending of that and Futurama and a little bit of Orville, and I think it's a really fun thing to see in the Trek universe. It really worked for me, and it felt like home. The intro, the music they used, definitely the credits, the color, the font, it all just felt like TNG 1.5.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, for me, this is hands down the best Trek since 2005.
Oh, yep.
I mean, and I went in with high expectations because you can't help but we liked the guy. We liked the trailer for what it was. I said to you, my biggest thing was, well, I like the characters. That was my biggest concern. And I watched this episode and I was so satisfied at the end. It not only hit my expectations, it beat them because it was a cleverly written piece. It had a real story. They crammed a massive amount of content in. It wasn't relying on jokes. It wasn't relying on little things. I wasn't fully sold on like the Black Ensign until the end reveal with her mum. That made there's an arc here as well. It's not just one-offs. You know, everyone was interesting. Everyone had fun moments. The amount of references was exactly what we would write. You know, and I kept thinking, like near the end, this feels like a Temporal Anomaly, my fan film, because they're referencing the universe, but organically. You know, that there's things that you would say, and yet there's still a real story here. You know, it definitely wasn't as funny as it could have been, but I think, you know, we like a combination of all of the above, and have a real story with real characters. Like, it's a better balance than it could have been, and it's definitely not that Rick and Morty toilet humour. They're staying away from that. There's different sort of humour, like pumping a heart. Okay, whatever. But it's such a small part, you know? It doesn't focus on that stuff.
Yeah, there was more story than I expected. There was a good A-B plot, and I
Which
didn't
tied
anticipate that. Well, absolutely. I didn't really anticipate that, per se. The one thing that kind of bugged me a little bit was the super fast pace of it, but that's animation these days. You got a lot to cram into the time. And Mariner, the girl you were referring to earlier, her speech pattern is very, very, very rapid. Like, there's no breaks between. Like, if you listen, there's like, it's just dialogue, 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 dialogue. A little bit of a break, dialogue. It's very fast paced. That kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop, but I should have known better because that's how animation, a lot of it is these days, and that's fine, I guess. It's very fast paced, and it takes another viewing or two to kind of really get everything, all the little nuances.
Which is nice, because like that isn't the case of a lot of current TV. It's like, oh yeah, I saw 92% of that. It's like, oh. I will agree to some extent that the difference being this is the pilot and the establishing, and they crammed in more than I think they will normally. Because if you try and rattle off how many plot points they had, it's absurd, and yet they were pretty much all satisfyingly done. So I think this is like the exception to the rule a little bit. It's like the first episode of Orville is more stupid than most of the other episodes. You know, it's got a slightly different feel. And yeah, it's the style. This is one of those sorts of shows where, unlike live action, where you're kind of embracing it as it is, if you don't like the animation style, you're not, like, there's barriers to entry. If you don't like comedy, if you don't find this funny, if you don't like the animation style, if you don't like half-an-hour shows that change storytelling, all these things can, you know, you're not just going in like, is this the new TNG, is this the new Voyager? So this will not, a lot of people won't like this, but I think classic fans, like, this is an optimistic, friendly, nice, classic feeling. I mean, come on, as soon as the Dederedex appears in the tile sequence, you're like, oh, it's a canon design. They're not 25% differenting. They're not forcing it to look different. They're using exactly what they should be in the appropriate way, and even things you wouldn't think they would do, like the transporter sound effect, is literally the TNG one. It could have been different. It wasn't. The holodeck arch is literally the one from TNG. I went back and looked. It's exact replica. Things that they could have just said, well, it's a new ship, let's change them. They didn't, which makes it so refreshing. Oh my god, where has this been? You know, for the last... It just reminds me of Intimate Darkly, of like, it's a good story, well told in the universe, but also developing it. You know?
Yeah, the attention to detail and making it feel very much in the realm of TNG. Like I said, TNG like 1.5, you know, just that next. And it felt like home. It really did. And that's some of the best Trek we've had since the new Trek started. And so many canon references, such good vibe and feeling. And like you said, the right sound effects, the right look. It's just all there. And Mike McMahon's even said this was made for Star Trek fans that are hardcore Star Trek fans. There's a lot of references and things that they're going to absolutely love. I do hope that it's a little toned down maybe for future episodes, as this was the pilot episode and it did seem very jam-packed.
I think if you took out the introduction story, like the first 6 minutes is welcome to the ship, if you took out that, that would be part of the main A plot. It's just because they put that on as well. But considering it's crammed, the pace is still great. Just a little bit fast. And, you know, Trek for Trek fans, I mean, yes, you could argue it's nostalgia, but the thing is, it's also not, because it's a new ship, new uniforms, new bridge, new crew, new mission, new gimmick, new vibe, new set design, new take on the universe. Like, it's not the same thing, they're just in the universe. At what point is calling out Chadich as a reference versus just using the world? That's why I hate fan service, because if they live in the world, they will reference the world. And there's one little detail I want to give massive credit for, because animation is so intentional. One detail that I was so impressed with is when they beam down to the planet to meet their, Chancellor guy, they've got transport enhancers at the beam-in site, which they never do a close-up on, they only exist on 2 establishing shots, and there's no mention of them. So the team had to say, you know what, this is probably safer if we use transporter enhancers, let's put them down the animation. It didn't need to be there at all. But they put that detail in that I bet most people didn't notice, and yet your brain noticed it because that's a part of the universe. And that was attention to effing detail that goes so far beyond anything we've had since Doug Drexler and Michael Okuda were really trying with Enterprise. And it might not be the best story ever, or the best characters ever, but you certainly like this cast more than you did in the Discovery first episode, the Discovery Season 2 first episode, or the Picard Season 1 first episode. You like the cast better than any of those in half the time. You know what I mean? That tells you something about the storytelling, that it's so much superior.
And I gotta say the Cerritos looks fantastic in all of its shots. I love how it's like a CG thing with like a toon shader. It's very, and the intro is fantastic.
Tile sequence.
I got a great laugh out of the title sequence. I didn't expect that. A lot of people complained about that, saying that it was, the whole crew's incompetent, I guess. But I have no issues with it. It's funny. It's some nice tie-ins to other things like Galaxy's Child with the thing sucking on the warp nacelle. So yeah, there's a lot of cool goodness in here for actual like hardcore fans of the franchise that will get these little references. And as I said last night in my first reaction review, so many references, you might not get them all. Some might sound familiar, and you're like, wait a minute, I know that name, or I know that reference. What's that from? And it's going to make you go back and look it up, or look up the episode that it's in and watch it. It's kind of a gateway drug to Star Trek, because even if you're just a casual fan, some things are going to sound familiar or look familiar. You're gonna, where's that from? And you're going to go back and watch the other stuff.
Put it this way, I don't want to go back and watch Discovery Season 1. Not very much Season 2, maybe, especially not the second half. Picard Season 1, I watched it a second time, don't watch it a third time. This is a rewatch show. I can guarantee on all its platforms it's going to be on, this is going to get massive rewatch, which they're going to see and be like, oh damn, third time's lucky. Like, this needs to be like a 5, 6, 7 season show. It's cheaper, it's easier, it's creative ideas, it's just... I mean, were you not like astounded that, again, in contrast, we like all the characters, and then Discovery Episode 1, Picard Episode 1, not even close. And the people who will always use the, well, Star Trek's never good its first season or second season, as if that means that every single Trek show that they spend 80 million on should therefore be bad in season 1 and season 2, even though no, people want things to be the best they can. But if you don't hire good enough people with good enough scripts, you make bad TV. So it's not, I honestly think it's like the curse of the 2 seasons. Guess what, Stuart? This is probably the best pilot Trek's ever had. So sorry, where's that 2 seasons of bad? No, it's because they were less good shows. You know what I mean? I mean, would you possibly agree this is the best pilot of all of them?
I would say, yeah.
I mean, TOS is close second, but this is so much more like refined.
Yeah, well, it's got a lot more lore to work on, right? So, anyway, that's kind of just our general thoughts. Now we should probably talk about specifics of the episode because this is the spoiler-filled one. And yeah, we get introduced to the new crew, or at least Tindy coming on board, her first assignment. And, you know, we get that kind of story where, I forget the guy's name with the purple hair.
I will say the only thing I now thinking, I don't remember any of their names. None of their names sunk in at all.
I remember Tindy is this Orion. Mariner is the crazy one.
Well,
Rutherford, I think, is the cyborg.
These are familiar, but none of them particularly kicked in. There's a lot of people.
Yeah. It takes me a while. It takes me a while to remember characters' names all the time. So,
the episode is one step ahead of you, which I liked. And yes, I'm sure you could try and think ahead. But having the captain be the mum, that threw me for a loop. I had no idea that was coming. And sorry, just because they're both black doesn't mean I'm going to assume it. I don't know why you would assume that. You know, unless you're really like.
No, that surprised me too. And we still don't know their relationship. Are they together? Are they divorced? Because he does call her sweetie. But it'll be interesting to find that out. And I think they're keeping her in Starfleet for her own good. They see potential in her because this is her 5th ship, and they even at one point said, "We'll throw her in the brig," and she's like, the other one's like, "Well, she actually really enjoys being in the brig, so no." Because somebody on my live last night said why she would be booted out of Starfleet so fast. And I'm like, yeah, but if you have an admiral dad and a captain mom, and they see the potential in you to become an actual officer, they would try to keep you in Starfleet. And I know she's very opposed to that, as are a lot of kids that grew up with that kind of thing. They don't want to do that. So I find that very cool, and seeing how that's going to play out.
And the way the episode plays out is that she's kind of like the Kirk in the sense she goes against the regulations to help people. So therefore, boot out Starfleet. I mean, if you go by that logic, Kirk should have lost his command how many times? You know, there's a certain point where, okay, these things happen, and you get the sense that she was a much, much higher rank. I mean, Ensign's the lowest possible rank, so fair enough. So I mean, she did get demoted as far as you can go, and assigned to a ship that is as Mike, the director or whatever, said, you know, one of the least desirable ships. So this is this is basically putting you on the lowest tier of the rung, just out of the way, and yet she still wants to help and do her thing. So I'm absolutely fine with that, you know. And yeah, I mean, if she's that young, quote unquote, and got to that high rank that quickly, and also she's good at what she does, and people mellow out, you know, over years. Look at Tom Paris. Look at Kirk. He was different in Star Trek too, wasn't he?
It was cool seeing the bridge crew, the senior staff, being kind of more, you know, looked up to or misunderstood, I guess, from the rest of the crew. We always get it from their perspective. All of these series, this one is the lower decks looking up, and the senior staff always get all the credit. And yeah, in her captain's log at the very end, the Dr. Tiana, gets all the credit for solving the problem. And there's a reference from Mariner that maybe you should put Ensign Boimler in the report, because he had the slime on him, and then in the ready room, even he is like, yeah, he kind of rolls his eyes after the whole captain's log is done. So, and you got to think of it from that point of view, because we hear a lot of captain's logs, and it's never really, credit's not given all the time to all the players. So I love that aspect of it, and that's what's going to make this show fun, because it's relatable. You know, we're not all top tier in our jobs. We don't always get the credit we deserve, and I love that.
And what it makes me remember is that when they pitched Discovery Season 1, they said, oh, it's going to follow a secondary character on the lower decks of the crew. and yet she's always on the bridge, always the first one on away mission. I mean, she's more important than the captain. So completely betrayed the premise of, you know what I mean? That was meant to be this, and this episode shows actually the premise correctly done. And I know some people can. Well, I know I've heard a little bit that the bridge crew is a bit shit for what they did, but remember, she's captain of a very, very low tier ship. She's not the best and the brightest. She's a very. You're not looking at Picard, so obviously she doesn't even remember his name. I mean, yes, there's maybe 150 people, whatever, but this isn't the creme de la creme. Obviously, the Doctor did. I mean, at least it's contextual. The Doctor did save the ship because they couldn't have solved it, but it was the happenstance of finding it. It's a credit rather than solving, but credit should be given. So it's a nice way of not making them look too bad, but just like that line of, "Come on." No, it's clever, and I love that it was the goo that saved them in the end, because you're thinking it's two separate things, but it's such an organic way. And I think the cow spider creature is a reference to J.J. Abrams' first film, where there's all these creatures attacking Kirk, and they're all like classic monster, and we've never really had that, where these big giant I kill you monsters, and it just feels so Star Wars, especially the Genosians Attack of the Clones, and yet this creature, as soon as it appears, you think, oh my god, okay, it's an alien, whatever, fine, great, alien of the week. Turns out to be a friendly cow. That's Star Trek. That's the twist that is like, and watching it a second time, you're like, good job, episode, well played, well done, Star Trek there, which I think was a little bit of a dig on 09, showing us that, and not that you can't have evil creature, deadly creatures, but it was like the same situation and then Star Trekified. So it's clever. I don't know why people don't think it's clever. Now, it's not necessarily laugh out loud funny. I don't know if you'll talk about the humour, but it wasn't like ha ha ha. But it was a clever humour where, I see what they did. Oh, that's good. Oh, I liked that. You feel good with the moments. You don't necessarily laugh out loud.
And not all of them hit home. There were some cringy things, but overall it was very well done. I loved the whole bug bite thing. Something as innocuous as a bug bite, and he's like, it'll be fine. I'm not going to get it checked out. Right away, that's going to be a problem. And to turn into a zombie plague where, did I eat human flesh? How much did I eat?
That was so dark. That was like,
I know, it went way off the rails. And one thing that they missed out on, I think, in this episode, which would have been really fun, when Tindy first walks into sickbay and you see just crap going on everywhere.
Yeah.
And the doctor's like, hey, green girl, help me out here. Put them together. They're not going to reinfect themselves.
Yeah.
I have expected to see an EMH with an appearance from Robert Picardo.
That would
have been great. Please state the nature of whatever. And I think that would have been great, because that's the perfect time to use an EMH when your sick bay is that overrun.
And she's yelling at him, like, really, really mean.
Yeah. So I wish they would have done something like that. And I'm looking forward to seeing cameos in future episodes. Yeah. But I really expected at least one in this one. And that scene, going back and rewatching it, it's like that would have been the perfect fit for that, if they could have done that.
I agree, but also that would have detracted from the news would have been, Robert Picardo guest on Lower Decks rather than Lower Decks show.
No, I get it.
But in watching the quality of this writing, because there's good quality writing, I can imagine they can bring. This is the best time to bring back George Takei. Because he still sounds about the same. You can play, unlike every other show the last 12, 15 years. If they said George Takei coming next week's episode, you're like, they're going to show the TOS Connie or the Wrath of Khan or the Excelsior accurately in full red. Like, they're going to show it properly, as we've deserved for decades now. So now I'm like, this is the opportunity for them to use that, to bring back legacy actors, because this is unlimited potential. You can have George play himself at 20. You can have do a time travel story. You can do all these amazing things, and it's not just going to be comedy for the sake of comedy. Yes, he'll say "Oh my," but it'll also do this or this. It's really, really, really reassuring, the level that we got here. And while I'm sure some episodes will be misses, if they hit the ground running this hard and beat every pilot out of the water, this is the starting point.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, what did you think of the romantic subplot with the cyborg and the Bajoran lady?
Subverted my expectations.
Not Bajoran, sorry.
Trill,
yeah. Yeah. And it almost feels like Tindy and him might get together at some point. They got so much in common. I love her reaction to like, oh really? Why would it do that? Like, you thought she was talking about their relationship not going anywhere, and no, she was agreeing with him that in a red alert, the doors shouldn't do that.
I mean, it's a very Orwellian humour, where they're having wear your quarters during a firefight of a plague. That's very, but it's like that's the perspective that we don't get to see, and therefore it was refreshing to see. That was cute.
Yeah.
It was cute. It was fun.
The one thing I didn't like in this episode, there might have been a few small things, but one was the really fast-paced talking really kind of irritated me a little bit, and the bunks in the hallway. No starship ever has had bunks in the hallway. In Star Trek 6, we got them bunking together. It was in a room with two sets of bunks, very small room, tight quarters, but still not in a corridor. And that was in the movie era time, which is fine. I mean, this is TNG. The only explanation I have for it is just for the sake of comedy. And perhaps there is because this is a second contact ship, they need more crew on board to stay at the planet after they leave, maybe. So the actual quarters are being taken up by this other crew that's not always there, and all of these lower decks guys get bumped to the corridor until there's... But I found the bunks in the hallway a little bit...
I'll say one thing I didn't like. I didn't like the engine room too much. It made me feel like a Discovery, the engine room, with that being that like wide room, which is grey and boring. Didn't like the engine room so much, although it was a holodeck and not full of life. So that was what I didn't like set-wise. But for me, the corridor, I had absolutely no problem with. I thought it was actually quite interesting, because it tells you that it's a small-ass ship with way too many people on, and the lower decks people really are not important in the grand scheme. I mean, it's not going to be like hundreds of meters of corridor. It's like a dormitory. It's just like Star Trek 6. I mean, why would you have 9 rows of bunk beds in a room? But it's a massive ship, and they've got hundreds of crew. So it's just like an efficient way of having the lowest people, and as soon as you get promoted, you go higher. You know, if there's 100 ensigns, you've only got 14 cubic meters. I mean, it was different. It kind of reminded me of BSG a little bit, how they're lined out. I thought it was interesting. It tells you this is not a special ship. This is like the basics. You are the lowest rank. You have the lowest rank quarters. And shirtless guy walking through, I thought was funny. Like a sure. No,
I thought the whole we're near the showers and it smells musty, which is weird because there's sonic showers. Yeah.
But yeah, although I'm guessing he must have had like real water showers at home. Otherwise, because if every shower was sonic, you wouldn't comment it's sonic because all the showers are sonic. You know what I mean? Small thing there. Although I know some people had slight complaints about her getting drunk at the start, because that seems very whatever. But the difference being, synthahol is on. You can't get drunk on your ship, because it's all synthahol unless you bring special booze that's real booze. And so when she got a chance to go to a station with real booze, she took it. Because you can't replicate real booze. Don't usually get you drunk.
And when Tindy came aboard, she says, I got some, shore leave contraband I need to get rid of. Yeah. So let's come with me. So yeah, she's got stuff on board that's the real deal. So
yeah, she just got the real, it's fine. It's good. The only thing that apart from the engineering, I wasn't the biggest fan of the last moments where they reference all the famous characters. That I thought was the only like forced reference, because I don't know why she started saying all that stuff. I guess she's the mentor, but Deanna Troy's not a mentor. Worf's, you know what I mean? The choice of people were weird. Like if she said Kirk, Picard, Sisko, like the captains as mentors, but that was like, why are you forcing something here? But that was the only reference I thought was forced.
The interesting thing is she said she served on 5 starships. It'd be cool if one of them was the Enterprise D when it crashed. So she had to get transferred to the other ship, the Quinto or whatever it was. I forget the other ship she had before. But yeah, because she says, my man Worf. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Oh, Indiana. She looked really good in that whatever, right?
I could see that.
That would be kind of neat to find out the other ship she's served on. And she's been demoted, too. She was demoted back down to ensign.
And we don't know what she was. Could have been a pretty high rank. And it's pretty impossible to know their ages as well, to be honest. Like, apart from the main guy. And because you can be an ensign at any age, we've seen that, and it's kind of embarrassing if you're 60 or an ensign. So there's no like reference. That's why he wouldn't think anything of her being maybe 30 and an ensign, because you can be. But yeah, she could have easily been a lieutenant commander on the Enterprise. La la la. Yeah.
And I think she might have been, because she might have been fast tracked because like I said, her dad's an admiral, her mom's a captain. So she might have been super dedicated to her studies when she was younger and got quite high rank, and then realized something happened that she just said hell with it.
Well, I could see it that she was a classic character, classic high achiever, and then she made a choice that Starfleet didn't like, just like I guess like Raffi a bit, and then she was just like, what the hell's the point? And then
her character says that every time you make a decision, they slap you down.
Yep.
Every time so yeah, there's a backstory there for her character that I'm going to be interested to find out about.
And it was nice. This episode felt deep. Everyone had things. You know? Everyone had something. And that was refreshing. Again, it wasn't, I mean, like I say, even more than the Discovery characters. Like, we don't know anything about the bridge crew. I feel like I know the Trill Lady more than I knew the bridge crew of Discovery. Even now. You know what I mean? It's really, yeah, it's surprising. I really cannot wait for next week. I'm really like, I'm all episode by Blu-ray, and yeah. But Stuart, we have more stuff to talk about in minutia, because there's a ton of minutia, and we want to call that out. But glad you enjoyed it, Stuart. We'll talk about this fully, even more, scene by scene, in our live tonight. Please do join for that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys have enjoyed it as much as we have. If you haven't, that's fine. This sort of show can just be not for you. You know, some people just hate Rick and Morty, even though it's a cultural phenomenon. You know what I mean? Some people hate Star Wars, even though it's a cultural phenomenon. These things are, some people don't like them, so I'm not worried. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it, and I think this show is worth giving your support to, because this is for Trek fans, and also a good story, and that's the important thing.
That's right. So until you join us for the live, or you watch the breakdown episodes we're going to do, we really enjoyed talking about this.
Yeah.
Hopefully you liked it. But yeah, we will see you next time, guys. Make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to check out the rest of our content. Until then, I'm Captain Foley.
And Patreon. And I'm Fandom Cockins.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.